Hi, everybody. This is It's All About Food, and I'm your host, Caryn Hartglass. Thanks for joining me today. It's just you and me today, no guests. We're going to be talking about a number of different subjects that are important to me in 2024. Some of it affects my life. I like to share my experiences with my listeners, share some of the research I've done, and share some of the results that I've had trying different things to improve my life. I like to say sometimes that we're all guinea pigs, and no offense to guinea pigs. Unfortunately, many rodents are used in scientific experiments to help scientists understand human beings. And frankly, I don't understand how that works because we're different. And perhaps in some ways we're the same, but I digress. I like to conduct my own scientific experiments based on information I get from trusted sources. And that's becoming more and more difficult these days, isn't it? Who knows who we can trust? There's just so much information out there, and some of it may look really good, but it can be really false. Good luck to all of you on navigating these waters. What I do here on It's All About Food. Number one, I promote a vegan diet and lifestyle. Why? Because the most important thing to me is to reduce pain and suffering for the voiceless, for the non-human animals. And that includes food, it also includes lifestyle, and it extends even further to do the best we can to minimize exploitation of all life on Earth. And that's not just non-human animals, that's humans too. Because unfortunately, what we find in this capitalistic society is the businesses that abuse animals, non-human animals, also abuse humans because they want to make the most money they can, and exploitation allows for maximizing profit. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot make a profit in a business and also be compassionate. There are businesses that are doing that. And perhaps one day our capitalist society will be transformed to a compassionate capitalistic society. But I've always had a problem with our society wanting us to be consumers rather than citizens. Something to think about. So that's the underlying foundation here with It's All About Food. And I talk to experts in many different fields. In the medical field with doctors and nurses and nutritionists, with cookbook authors, athletes, people that are involved in food politics, people who are on the ground in locations all over the world discussing the injustice, the distribution problems with people getting the food they need. There are so many things to talk about when we talk about food. That's why this show is called It's All About Food. I was at an event recently and I was talking to some people and I kept mentioning my podcast saying it's all about food, and they kept saying, what is it called? And I would say it's all about food. And finally they realized, oh, the title of the podcast is It's All About Food. It just so happens to also be all about food. And here we are. It's all about food. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for caring. Thank you for knowing that it's all about food. Today I'm going to cover a number of topics. Alzheimer's and dementia, for one. And then an update on my life eating SOS-Free. I continue to learn so many things about myself, about eating and food, and living in a world with other people. I've been I've been different all my life, pretty much becoming a vegetarian as a teenager and always being on the outside of what is normal. So in some ways, I'm used to being different, eating differently than everybody, and I've kind of learned to comfortably and casually navigate. Sometimes I'm in people's faces, although I know that's not the best way to engage. So I've chilled quite a bit over the decades about that. I tend to not talk about my food choices until asked. But when people see that you're eating differently, they typically ask. So that opportunity usually presents itself. Yes, so Alzheimer's and updates on SOS-Free. Let's start with Alzheimer's. So it's in my face these days. My mother has Alzheimer's. Many, many people do. I remember reading a statistic a while back that 50% of people over 85 have some type of dementia. So we recently put my mother in a nursing home. That's a whole long story, but that's not what this podcast is about. And I've been clearing out her house, getting it ready for sale. And it's difficult doing that. Going through someone else's things, deciding what's valuable, what isn't valuable, what to do with it, and where to put it. I don't want it. I've got an apartment that's already full, and I'm trying to purge my stuff. But that's where being a consumer comes in, because society has taught us to be consumers. And I'm digressing again. I remember when I was just out of college and I had disposable income. I had a good job as an engineer and I was having fun, and holidays would come up and I enjoyed buying gifts for people, and it was fun and people enjoyed receiving them, but it was just increasing the clutter everywhere. It was momentarily fun. But in the end, did anyone really need most of the things that I gave them? No. And as I go through my mother's things, I see some of those gifts that I had given that were kind of stashed away in a curio cabinet collecting dust. I've also seen a lot of things related to food. For example, the kitchen cabinets. On the very top cabinets had a lot of space above them, and there was a fashion trend for a while. I don't know if it's still going on in kitchen cabinet decor, where you would put decorative items above the cabinets. They could actually be things that you use, but not very often, because you have to use a ladder or step stool or jump up on the kitchen counters to be able to take them down. We have cabinets like that in our apartment, and there are some large platters that we keep up there on top of our high cabinets. What I discovered in my mother's house was that these 5 decorative items that have been there for 20 years were not only covered in dust, but they were covered in a heavy grease. And I remember in my mother's years with dementia, after my dad died, she would make a lot of hamburgers. Lots of hamburgers. And that grease would go up with the vapors and land on those decorative items. And they were cute, these items that were up there. And I took them down and I looked at them and I said, I cannot clean these. I cannot clean these so that I can regift them or bring them to a thrift shop. They were cute items, useless other than for decorative purposes, but full of grease. Grease and dust. Layered for 20 years. Grease, dust. It was just horrific. So unfortunately, I had to send those to curbside trash collection and That goes to the dump. Very sad. But let's connect the dots here. All that grease that went up to the top of the cabinets, a lot of that went in the bodies of the people that were consuming the food that my mother was making, animal food. And that grease also creates plaque in human beings. It creates chronic disease and inflammation in human disease. Eating meat cannot fight disease, certainly not dementia. And people with Alzheimer's, people with dementia, they also have other issues: heart disease, circulatory impairment, cancers. Meat eating makes those worse. And when we clean our apartment here in New York City, this apartment, since I installed this new kitchen 25 years ago, has only seen a vegan diet, and primarily a whole food, low oil vegan diet. There's no oil residue. There's no grease residue. When we go up above the top cabinets to get those platters, and to dust, because, we like to keep our home clean, there's no grease. What's the difference? Plant foods versus meat foods. You can visually see it in the kitchen. And it's also what goes in people's bodies. Am I making sense? Am I getting through? It just blew me away. I've known this, and yet seeing it was so profound. And I've noticed here in our own kitchen, it's not that hard to clean. I have a neighbor who was complaining about her kitchen and how greasy it gets. Well, come on, what are you cooking? And sometimes it's simply cooking with oil, a lot of oil. Not just animal fats, but vegetable oils can also create residues in your kitchen, which are hard to clean, and create plaque inside your body. Yeah. I've also enjoyed talking about how cleaning dishes is a lot easier on a plant diet. It's easier to just, with some warm or hot water, rinse off the vegetables and fruits from your plates. I don't always use soap. Now, Gary likes using soap. He's a soap guy, and I am not. I just like to scrape off the stuff, and then I rinse it with hot water and let it dry, and it's clean. Animal foods are not the same. They stick to the pots more. They create residue. They're hard to clean. And the point is, if it's hard to clean, if it's collecting on your walls and cabinets on the exterior, it's doing the same on the interior. Okay, I've made my point. So it's moving, it's emotional to me, it's sad when I'm going through this house and I see the reasons for disease. I see why my loved ones have fallen to Alzheimer's, cancers, and all the chronic diseases that are out there. We have to die, sure. But can we live a long, quality life free from disease and then, when it's time, go peacefully in our sleep? I wish that for everybody. And this Alzheimer's thing, there are so many shades of Alzheimer's. You must know 1, 2, 10, 20 people that have succumbed to this disease because it's chronic and it's common. So many shades of Alzheimer's. I don't know if there's a better Alzheimer's or a worse Alzheimer's. I know with my mom, she's very smart. She's very logical. She's very rational. She just has no short-term memory. And so you can have a great conversation with her in the moment. You can ask for advice. And she knows. This is what makes it so difficult. She knows she has a problem. She wants to do stuff, but she can't figure out what to do because the memory is not there. It's so cruel. And I wonder sometimes if those who are impacted by Alzheimer's, maybe those who lose more of their mind, maybe they're better off because they don't know what's going on. I don't know. It's all terrible. And what's really terrible is that according to the brilliant neurologist, Dr. Jean and Ayesha Sherzai, the brain docs, they estimate 80 to 90%. 80 to 90%, it's bringing tears to my eyes, of Alzheimer's can be prevented. And even early stages can be reversed with diet and lifestyle, not drugs. All the Alzheimer's drugs that are out there, they don't prevent, they don't reverse. What they advertise, and even that is suspect, is that they can minimize future degradation due to the disease. They can slow the progression. And I don't even believe that. And those drugs come with symptoms, side effects. Whereas the diet and lifestyle that the Sherzais recommend, the side effects, better quality of life, reduced risk of cancers and other chronic diseases. What's going on? What's frustrating and difficult is not only do we not get the best information from mainstream medical professionals. Okay, we already know that most doctors don't know anything about nutrition. They barely study it in university. Fine. Then the nutritionists, the dietitians, they also don't get the state-of-the-art information. But on top of that, the studies that are done, if you don't go to each one that are making claims and find out how many people were in the study, what kind of test was done, you really don't understand the results. For example, so many studies are done on people who are on a standard American diet, SAD diet, high meat, high processed food. And when you're testing something with this pool of people, you cannot possibly take those results and apply them to someone who's on a healthy plant diet and lifestyle. It's apples and oranges. The results do not hold true. So when there are all these studies that are promoting coffee and saying it can reduce risk for this and that, who are they talking about? They are not talking about people who are on the healthiest diet and following the best lifestyle. So it's really hard to make sense of a lot of things. And what's more frustrating is that we have wonderful experts in the vegan world, wonderful experts in the whole food, plant-based world. And even they can't agree. And you wonder sometimes if they're just not doing enough work, or maybe they're not as good as they like to think they are at figuring out studies, or maybe they have some kind of bias. You know, we're all humans. And sometimes when we promote something and we realize it wasn't exactly correct with new research that's coming out, it might be difficult to backstep. It might be difficult to say, oh, I made a mistake, or oh, I didn't know everything, and now more information's coming out, and I'm going to change my stance. Some people don't want to do that. That's hard. It takes a lot of courage to say, I don't know, I was wrong, and also to change something that was a foundation for you for so long. So there are vegan doctors that don't agree on what to do. There have been all kinds of studies that have come out on fish oil, for example. And originally we thought, oh yeah, great benefit from fish oil. And then there were studies that came out that said no benefit from fish oil or DHA supplements. But you have to look at the pool of people that have been studied when they make these conclusions, because the studies typically are on people, like I said, standard American diet, animal product eaters, and many of these people don't have a low omega-3 index. And so when they look at taking these fish oils, you're not going to get the same results as when you're looking at people maybe like myself who are on a whole food plant diet for so long. When I started this SOS-Free lifestyle on July 23rd, a little more than 2 months ago, I thought I would also take the Omega Quant omega-3 index test. It's a simple blood test. You get the kit, you prick your finger, and you send it to the lab. And I was surprised. Oh my God, am I so ignorant about what I'm doing? I was so surprised. So I was not consuming 2 tablespoons of flax and chia seeds every day. I had them, but not religiously every day. I was supplementing with DHA, EPA, using Dr. Furman's liquid supplement, but not every day. It was occasionally. I just really didn't know that I needed it, and now I know I need it. My omega-3 index was on the low side of 5.44%, with a desirable range between 8 and 12%. I have some work to do. I'm hoping that now that I'm doing religiously 2 tablespoons of ground flax or chia seeds daily and taking my DHA supplement every day, that I will see some improvement. And for all I know, I may need to supplement a little more, but I have my baseline. I know that I need help. I've been talking a long time about the desired omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. I've read T. Colin Campbell's work and read books and studies, and we talked about how the standard American diet contains so much omega-6 because of the vegetable oils that people get in their processed foods and at the restaurants and blah, blah, blah. And it was believed that many people had a very high ratio of like 15-1 omega-6 to omega-3, and maybe the desirable range was somewhere around 4-1, and then ideally maybe 1-1. All that stuff is out there. Well, this test shows the desirable range to be around 3.1 to 5.1, and my level is a little higher, 5.6.1. So I'm not quite in the sweet spot, but not so bad. And that's because I don't eat any processed foods. For a long time, I've really stayed away from processed foods. And I discovered the restaurant food that I've been frequenting, the vegan restaurants that I love to promote and support. I know they use oil. And so that has likely affected my omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, although it's not terrible, but I know that I'm on a path to improve it. Basically, what I'm learning is we are all unique. Our environment, our diet, our lifestyle, our consciousness, the way we think, our stress levels, They're all unique, and our bodies respond in a certain way to our unique situation. But there are many things that are the same. Or at least we know that if we start at a baseline of sameness, consuming the best organic plant foods that we possibly can, and getting the right exercise and sleep that we need, our bodies respond favorably, reducing risk of disease, extending longevity, improving quality of life. And isn't that what it is about? Back to cleaning out my mother's house. Actually, it's my mother and father's house, but my father passed 7 years ago, so it seems like it's just been my mother's house for the last 7 years. But they both contributed to everything that's in there. I did do a lot 7 years ago when my dad passed, clearing out what was his and organizing it better. That there was a lot of paper purging and filing during that time, and I did give away most of his clothes. And I want to talk about recycling. Reduce, reuse, recycling. We all know that expression, and the key part there is reduce. Reduce consumption. Reduce buying all the stuff that we don't need. But we've all done it, and then the stuff is there, and what do you do with it? So I'm trying so hard to do the right things. You know, years ago, I remember a friend of mine who was going to move, and she was obsessing about all the books in her house months before she moved, and how she wanted to get them to good homes. And then I remember showing up when she was moving, and there were all the books, and they had not been moved, and they had not been dealt with. I'm not judging, but I know that we all want to do things, and it's overwhelming. And sometimes things just end up going to landfill. Bye-bye. I'm trying not to do that with everything. I was happy to find a book depository at a local library that took a lot of books, and I can only hope that they did good things with them. You know, you don't know. But I didn't want to send them directly to a landfill. And then flower vases. What do you do with flower vases? My mother had about 12, and they were very nice. I washed them, I cleaned them, and I was happy to know that the local florist would take them, and they were appreciative. I brought them over, and they said, "Would you like to take a bouquet of flowers?" And unfortunately, I didn't take them. Normally, I would love to take a bouquet of flowers home, but I was going back to my mom's, and my goal was to move things out, not take anything in. And I had already had a bouquet of flowers that a friend of mine had given me at home that I had wrapped up and brought with me to my mother's house because I wanted to enjoy them a little bit longer while I was doing this work. So, if you don't know this, florists will take your vases. So when people send you flowers, which is a lovely thing, I suppose, sometimes they come in vases. You don't have to discard those vases. You can return them to the florist. And then we have thrift stores. And I know that after COVID, during COVID and after COVID, this has made donations weird, or accepting donations weird. So different thrift stores will accept different things. I went to one thrift store that would not accept used cookware. They would not accept used dishes. Maybe they're overwhelmed, but they wouldn't accept them. And some of these items that I was giving away were really fine. They were clean and they were good. They just weren't going to be used. So I found another place that would accept them happily. And I hope the universe sends them to someone who can make the best use of them. And then there's furniture. It's so hard to give away furniture, and there are many wonderful sites now where you can post your furniture, Maybe someone will be interested in picking them up. This is complicated because there's so much cheap furniture today, right? That we buy and then discard because they don't hold up like furniture used to. There are a few pieces in my mother's house that are very old and very beautiful and very well made. And I'm trying to find a corner in my own home where they might go, or possibly get them to a good home. But some stuff just doesn't hold up and it just goes to the landfill. And a lot of things have to do with food. Appliances, housewares, food processor, blender, coffee urn, juicer, so many different utensils, silver-coated platters, soup tureen, colanders, all the bakeware. Humans really do need a lot of things. Now I'm going to move into eating healthfully while busy. And it's been especially challenging, I'll admit, doing SOS-Free, salt, oil, sugar-free. I was talking to some friends recently, really lovely people, kind, compassionate, generous, helpful, but overweight and not healthy. And I care about them. And I want them to have a quality life, experiencing everything that they can, instead of deciding not to do something because they're overweight and don't feel comfortable in the seats that are available at many events. But I know you can't be in people's face. You can't tell them what to do. You can try and open the dialogue, answer questions, provide whatever you can that might be helpful to them in their own personal journeys. And what I often hear is that people are busy. And it's especially difficult if they work a hard 8-hour day, 12-hour day, 15-hour day. They don't want to come home and cook. And I can understand that for people that work really hard, physical jobs, and or people that have young people at home waiting to be cared for and fed. It's not easy. And I knew that when I was going to be spending 4 days at my mother's house, clearing out, and I wanted to make the most use of my time, which meant working until I dropped physically of exhaustion, I would need to feed myself and stay on this SOS-Free diet and lifestyle commitment that I made because it's important to me. I am on a mission. If you haven't heard some of my earlier podcasts, since I started this journey over 2 months ago, I want to reduce my cholesterol, which for most vegans is not hard to do once they adopt an all-plant lifestyle, but for some of us, we have genetic issues and we have to work harder. And I am doing that. And we'll see in the next few months if it's made a positive impact. I hope it has. And so what I knew I had to do before going on this 4-day adventure was to prepare food so that when I was hungry, it would be there for me. And I've been doing this all along since I started on this journey. I've mentioned I make big soups for the week. I make 4 big jars, and they have been such a lifesaver when I am hungry. And it's funny, I don't know if you've experienced this, but you want to get something done, you're focused, you're working, and all of a sudden, feed me. You're starving and you cannot think, you cannot continue, you have to eat. And that's the danger time. Because when you're so hungry, you'll reach for anything. In the old days, if this would occur for me, I typically would grab a handful of nuts, handful of seeds, and there's nothing wrong with nuts and seeds. But you can eat too many calories. And that's what I've discovered for me, is that although I never had a weight problem, I think I'm really supposed to be slimmer. I've lost about 11 pounds now. And how far am I going to go? I'm going to go as far as my body naturally goes with this current diet and lifestyle and the exercise that I'm doing, maybe I'll get to a point of slimness where I'm exercising even more, and I'll need to eat more because I'm burning more. We'll see what happens when that happens, if that happens. But just going and grabbing some nuts and seeds separate from your meal when you're already allowing yourself to consume nuts and seeds in sauces and dressings, I was getting too many calories. So now I plan my meals in advance. I brought my soups with me. I brought my ground flax seeds with me. I went to the store and got the easy salads, the mixed greens in the boxes and the bags, the kind that don't require chopping and rinsing and spinning. And when I'm at home, I prefer to do that. I prefer to buy the heads of kale and the heads of lettuce that I chop and clean. But in a time when I knew that I wouldn't have the tools and I wouldn't have the time or the energy, I chose things that were in my rules of things that I could have, but easier, saving time, saving energy. And this way I was able to have my giant salads. I had my ground flax seeds every day. I reached for the soup when I felt like I really needed some serious nutrition, protein, carbohydrates, and fat from whole food, minimally processed sources. And I had plenty of fruits, and I ate well. What I recommend for people that are busy, there needs to be planning. There needs to be organization. There needs to be some time on your, quote, day off when you want to do nothing, where maybe you do things that will nurture yourself for the rest of the week. I like to think of it as a gift to myself, giving me what I want, giving me what I need in the future, and saving myself from grabbing the things that aren't good for me and are not going to make me feel good. So it's a gift. I did bring some other vegetables that I had in the house that I would need to prepare, and I never got to them. I just didn't have the time or the energy to prepare food. Now, in earlier days, when I wasn't doing this SOS-Free thing and I would come and visit my mom in her home, I bought her a lot of food, and I tried to keep what she was eating vegan, but easy for her to prepare. And a lot of those meals had oil and salt. And sometimes I would eat them because I was there with her and things got busy, and she liked it when I would eat with her. So we would share those things. They were vegan. Sometimes they were organic, but they had a lot of oil and, the salt. Sometimes I would prepare things made from simple frozen vegetables that have no salt, that have no oil. I would make big soups for her, and I would use them as well, that had these ingredients. There was one can of chickpeas in my mother's cupboard, and I figured, I'll eat them, they're here, but they were not no sodium. So what I did, they didn't have like tons of salt in them, but they had salt. I rinsed them. I soaked them. I drained them and rinsed them and soaked them a few times to get as much of the salt out. And you could really taste the difference. I used to make smoothies at my mother's house with frozen fruit, bananas, flaxseed, plant milk. Maybe sometimes I'd stick some leafy greens. But the Vitamix is gone. We gave that to a family member. So I just kept it simple. Same ingredients, just not blended. The frozen fruit, I popped in the microwave and got it to a room temperature and added it with some other fresh fruit, sprinkled it with flaxseed, then it was a great breakfast. If there's something that you really want, if you really want to lose weight, if you really want to eat healthier, you will put in the effort. Analyze your life, analyze your lifestyle, analyze your time during the day, and find the place where you can plan, organize, and prepare in advance. Those are gifts for you. and you will benefit from those gifts that you gave yourself. When at home, on this SOS thing, this SOS-Free thing, sometimes I want to make something special. And I know my partner Gary, he loves pancakes. Now, I've been making buckwheat crepes, and they're fantastic. They're easy. And I use my Sensarte nonstick pan. Very happy with all of that. But sometimes he likes a fluffy pancake. So I have this recipe. I put it up at responsibleeatingandliving.com. It's a very simple pancake recipe. Many recipes are like this. It's just simple ingredients, flour, some kind of sweetener, maybe, salt, oil, everybody adds those things. I use organic einkorn, whole wheat, and white flours, a mix. I used to add maple syrup for sweetener, maybe a little vanilla, and oil the pan. And baking powder. And when I was figuring out how to do this recipe on SOS-Free, okay, I use my Sensarte frying pan, nonstick. That's easy. For a sweetener, I can use date paste or our almond butter. I've talked about that a gazillion times. We take a pound of dates or a pound of apricots, mix them with 3 cups of water, boil them, puree them, and it's a beautiful jam, sweetener, whatever you want. They have to be organic, of course. We don't want any of those sulfur preservatives on anything. But what about baking powder? Baking powder, it's a leavening agent. I've used it a million times. Baking soda as well. Baking soda is like baking powder, except it's mixed with an acid. And when baking powder comes in contact with a liquid, when you wet it, it releases carbon dioxide bubbles, and that causes things to get fluffy and rise. Okay. I like better living with some kinds of chemistry. But then I thought, you know what's in baking powder, Caryn. Yes, you do. Sodium bicarbonate. And what's in sodium bicarbonate but sodium? And then I looked on the label and I'm blown away. 1 tablespoon of baking powder, Bob's Red Mill, one of my favorite brands. 1,920 milligrams. 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And I put 1 tablespoon of baking powder in my pancake mix that normally were for 2 people. 1 cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And I've used baking powder in a lot of things. In muffins, a lot of gluten-free baking. And there was always this metallic taste that I didn't care for. And if you add enough sweetener, then you can kind of mask that metallic taste. But now I'm realizing how much sodium, how much salt is in baking powder. I can't use that. I remember reading about sparkling water to use to make things fluffier or rise, and I thought it was time to give it a try. I used it in my pancake mix, and it worked. No baking powder, fluffy pancakes. So my new project, and it's going to take a long time because I don't bake as much as I used to. I don't use flour as much as I used to. But the trick is going to be how much sparkling water to use in place of baking powder. And sparkling water adds liquid, so maybe some other liquid in the recipe will be reduced to make up for the liquid you're adding. But I'm really looking forward to trying this. I've always wanted to eliminate baking powder from my food, and sparkling water may be the ticket. Not for everything, but for many things. Have you used sparkling water in place of baking powder? Have you had success? I'd like to know. Of course, aquafaba is in the mix as something that can be used and helps make things fluffy. We can make meringue with aquafaba. Aquafaba is the water left over from cooking beans. The favorite is garbanzo beans. without salt. You can't put salt in the water because then you'll get salty aquafaba, and that's no good. But aquafaba has been used as a binding agent, in mayonnaise, as a thickener. So aquafaba and sparkling water, that might be the combo that I'm going to use in many of my old recipes and going forward with new recipes. And while we're talking about baking powder, I just want to read the ingredients in Bob's Red Mill baking powder. Sodium acid pyrophosphate, sodium bicarbonate, cornstarch, and monocalcium phosphate. Okay, those are all nice ingredients that I don't want to use in my products. And of course, there is a low sodium baking powder. Of course there is. Rumford has a low sodium baking powder with calcium acid, pyrophosphate, cornstarch, sodium bicarbonate, potassium bicarbonate, monocalcium phosphate, and it contains about half the sodium of regular baking powder, but it's still loaded. 1 tablespoon has 840 milligrams of sodium, which is too much. And of course, you're wondering about baking soda, right? Well, baking soda is all sodium bicarbonate, and 1 teaspoon is 1,120 milligrams of sodium. Now, with baking soda, we typically use much less, maybe a third, depending on the recipe, with some sort of acid like lemon juice or vinegar or cream of tartar, a powdered form of tartaric acid. But still, baking soda has a lot of sodium. But don't you fear, my baking soda that I have in the cupboard will never go to waste. I love baking soda. I use it every week for cleaning. I use it for everything. I scrub all the porcelain stuff, anything that requires some amount of scrubbing. It's wonderful. It works great. I love baking soda. Sometimes I use it for stain removal with a mixture of peroxide or vinegar, depending on what I'm trying to remove. Baking soda is a wonderful ingredient for cleaning. I went to an event recently, and I'm not at liberty to talk about it yet because it's about a particular product that has not launched, but when it comes out, you'll be hearing about it from me because I'm very excited about it. But I was able to eat most of the things they served at this gorgeous event. They had a hot beverage bar serving plant milks. Whee! Can you believe it? With different teas and coffees. And they offered a matcha with pistachio milk. I have to say this was wild because I've been craving things with pistachios. Now, in the old days, I went nuts when I'd see a pistachio vegan ice cream. Whoa, I love that. And I was thinking about pistachio butters, pistachio milk. I never see it, and I'm waiting to find a place that sells organic pistachios that will not break the bank. I have not found it yet. But I was thrilled to see this being offered, and I had a luscious cup of matcha with pistachio milk. And the pistachio milk was not sweetened, so all was good there. On the subject of nuts and being nuts about pistachios and other nuts and other seeds, I want to give a plug for foodtolive.com. I get no kickbacks. I'm not an affiliate. I get nothing for promoting them. I just love their products. So this is a company. They have a warehouse in Brooklyn. So if you're in the New York metro area, it's convenient. They deliver very quickly. If you're buying small quantities, it's outrageously expensive. That's not why I buy their products. I buy in bulk. And I buy in bulk at a point where the prices are reasonable or better than the stores, and the quality is outstanding, organic and delicious. So they have nuts, seeds, grains, beans. I bought a 10-pound bag of flax seeds because we're eating so many flax seeds now. 2 tablespoons ground flax seeds every day. And sunflower seeds, cashews, unhulled sesame seeds. And if you're listening to this podcast today, October 8th, 2024, when this show is being broadcast, Food to Live is offering a 15% off discount today. And the code is OCTDEAL2024. OCT, as in October. OCT Deal 2024, 15% off store-wide today. I just took advantage of it, and perhaps you will too. You will not be disappointed. Remember, you have to buy in larger quantities. They show you on each product's page what the price is per pound, so you can see where it's reasonable. But I get it, maybe you don't have room. So I keep all the nuts and seeds that we buy in the freezer. And fortunately, we have a good-sized freezer in our refrigerator to store nuts and seeds. I also keep whole grains there because all of these foods can go rancid very quickly. And when you're buying in bulk, they're going to be in your home a little longer than if you buy in small quantities. So it's a balance. It's all about what fits your lifestyle. But I just wanted you to know about it because they make me very happy. My last topic to talk about while updating on the SOS-Free routine is eating in restaurants, which I rarely do. But we were meeting friends a few days ago, and Gary chose a spot outdoors that looked rather friendly and flexible. And we got there, and both of us were not planning to eat anything. We had already had some food to eat, and we were going to the theater afterwards. We figured we'd get sparkling water, and that would be it. But I noticed they had watermelon on the menu, so I asked the server if they could bring me a plate of fruit. And I didn't want anything else on it, no sugar or anything. And she said, we do offer berries and cream. I didn't see that on the menu, but I said, okay, can I have just the berries? She said, sure, I can bring you the cream on the side. And then I said, no. Don't bring any cream. I don't want to be responsible for using any cream. Thinking in the back of my mind, not wanting to support the use of tortured animal products. She brought us the berries. It was beautiful. We had a lovely time. Everybody had great fun. And we had our colorful dishes that fit in with everybody else. Happy ending. Gary's in California at the moment, and unfortunately, he did not do as well when he went to a restaurant with some friends and family for an event. But he wasn't thinking, and I think he's learned from his experience because he was at a Mexican restaurant. He thought, I'll order beans. He ate the beans, salty. Restaurants will always cook beans with salt. He thought he'd get the guacamole. You know, we make guacamole all the time at home. We never put salt in it. But of course they do in restaurants. And he said, wow, I could really taste the salt. And when you're not eating salt, and then you have something that's salty, an alarm goes off. It's like pinpricks almost. You can taste the salt. And the purpose of salt is to bring out flavor. But when you're not used to consuming salt and you consume it, what you taste is the salt separate from the food. And you realize that it's not a good thing. I will admit, when I first started this SOS-Free thing, I went out with a friend of mine and we went to the Cheesecake Factory and I ordered the vegan Cobb salad, no dressing. I thought, okay, how bad could this be? Well, it was bad. When I looked later online at their website, which lists all the ingredients and nutritional breakdown for all their dishes, it was loaded with sodium, and I realized the chickpeas that are on there are cooked in salt. The vegetables, the cooked vegetables that they add are cooked in salt. The grain, quinoa that they add is cooked in salt. So if I want to be sociable, I can always order a salad at a restaurant that has raw fruit, raw vegetables, no dressing, with maybe some lemon wedges or vinegar on the side, plenty of greens, and that's safe. And many of you are probably thinking, oh, why suffer? Is it worth it? And if that's how you feel, that's fine. If you have cholesterol, if you have plaque, take a statin. Live your life. Have a good time. I don't want to take drugs. It's very simple. I know they have side effects, and I know that while they may be helping a particular symptom, high cholesterol, for example, there may be other things at play. There may be other things that I'm experiencing in my body that are not healthful. So I am doing this as a gift to me to be as healthy as I can and to live a long quality life as possible. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But the bottom line is, as I started this program, the one thing that is very clear, I have no regrets about no matter what happens, is that I am not consuming animals. And if you enjoy eating processed food, if you enjoy eating in a restaurant, whatever it is, that's fine as long as there are no animal ingredients. Enjoy your food. Don't torture anybody else while you're eating. And by anyone else, I mean the animals that have been tortured and exploited and murdered to be a morsel on the plate. Have I talked for almost an hour? I guess so. Well, I hope there's been some useful information in here for you. If you have any comments or questions, or you want to share a story with me about experiencing Alzheimer's, being a caregiver, or doing the SOS-Free thing, I welcome hearing from you. info@realmeals.org. And now it's been a beautiful day all day today, and I just can't wait to get out and move my body, because 60 minutes plus of cardio is on my list of things to do every day, and it's time. Thanks for joining me for another episode of It's All About Food. This podcast is called It's All About Food. It is produced by the nonprofit Responsible Eating and Living at responsibleeatingandliving.com. Big shout out for the team at Progressive Radio Network. I am so grateful for you for broadcasting this podcast. Thank you all for the work. Everybody, have a delicious week.